Welcome back to the Fly Now breakdowns, because what happened was I had a technical difficulty with the recording and I couldn't get the reaction out because the file wasn't working, so we decided let's just do a breakdown instead and just talk about what our reactions were to certain scenes and what our thoughts are on just key sequences and events that was happening during the episode.
No, yeah, for sure. So like you said, if you haven't watched episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, make sure you go and watch that because we don't want to spoil anything for you. We'll give you like 5 seconds before we start getting into it. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow. I mean, the hype for that episode was there, and boy, did it deliver.
Yeah.
Boy, did it deliver.
I feel like it was by far the best episode of the season. It's like not even close.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is not one clip of Boba, which is interesting. And I was kind of surprised that they went the route that they did with not having anything Boba, but thinking of it more, I think the plot with Boba is kind of winding down, because what are they going to do? Like I said this on the round table. I said I think one's going to be recruit, one's going to be training, one's going to be fight. And I think this was the recruitment episode. I think we might see a little bit more of that next episode, and then I think we're going to see a big training montage. Then the final episode's going to be a big fight. But wow, they did a lot right here. Putting Din right off the bat. I mean, we could just kind of start with our breakdown of the episode.
Yeah.
Literally, the first scene we see Din. Holy crap. That was crazy. I know our reactions during that, we were just going wild. We see Din kind of go back to his old ways, but for a good reason, because really Mandalore at this time is just very, it's still broken, and it's still, like Boba says in the one episode of Mandalorian, it got shattered like glass by the Empire. So Din hasn't gone back, and we learned that, which I think is really interesting. So what do you kind of think about that, Hereth, that Din hasn't even gone back to Mandalore? We just found that out.
Yeah, I found that, again, because I feel like after Mando Season 2, I feel like Din's kind of just in a state of, like, self-searching ever since, like, Grogu left. Like, he's just trying to, like, refine himself of, like, what does he want to do with his life? Like, what do he want to do? And I feel like he just kind of was, like reluctantly just kind of went back to bounty hunting because that's the only thing he ever knew. And I feel like I can honestly see a scenario where him and Bo-Katan were just like disagreement. He's like, I'm taking the Darksaber and I'm just leaving. Yeah.
And like we even see like he doesn't have a lot right now. He lost Grogu, he lost his shit, he has no friends, he doesn't really like, you feel kind of bad for Din because he doesn't really have anyone. So after he's done fulfilling this mission, we see him go right back to the armor, which is so cool. That whole scene with him just wiping out all of those guys, and he's like, I could bring you in warm, or I could bring you in cold. It's like, oh, he said the thing. So cool. And then we kind of get this scene with him, the armor, and Pre Vizsla's. Would it be his like grandson?
It would be Paz Vizsla. Yeah, I think it would be his grandson.
Okay, yeah. So we see a scene with him, Paz Vizsla, and the armor like makes basically a direct a quote directly correlated with what Sabine says, or Bo-Katan says in Rebels, which was awesome. She starts talking about the history of the Darksaber, because you have to remember, Din doesn't know really anything about the Darksaber. He got this thing. He learned what some of the moral meanings were from Bo-Katan, but now the armor really starts to explain the history of the Darksaber to Din, which is super neat.
Yeah, because like that whole sequence again just feels like the scene from Rebels when I forget who it is, when he's explaining to Kanan about the history of the Darksaber, when the Mandalorians stormed into the Jedi Temple and stole the saber from them.
Yeah, and she starts talking like 10,000 years prior, Paz Vizsla, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and it's like, wow, this feels like it was like directly cut it out of Rebels, out of Rebels. And Hereth, I know you want to talk about how this episode related to animated shows.
Yeah, for sure. This episode, again, we'll get onto it later, but like this episode feels like an absolute love letter to anyone that watched all the animated shows or anything Star Wars, like, because I feel like if you watch this episode in vacuum, you're still gonna get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But if you watch Clone Wars and Rebels, this episode gets enhanced like 10,000 fold.
Yeah, for sure. And then we see the Purge of Mandalore. That was one of the coolest scenes I've seen.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of refresh your guys' reminder, we see about thousands of TIE fighters just flying over Mandalore, dropping bombs, and the armor refers to it as the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Which was referenced in Mando Season 1 because Moff Gideon says, do you remember the Night of 1,000 Tears where Mandalore fell?
Yeah, so they're connecting those points, and to see it, we see it live action, Mandalore just getting destroyed, which was so cool. And I'm sure we're gonna see a lot more of that in Mando Season 3. And that's one thing I think this episode did really well was this episode was kind of just like a hype up for Mando Season 3. While still being relevant in the plot of the Book of Boba Fett, which I thought was done brilliantly. Though we didn't, again, like we said earlier, we did not see one scene of Boba Fett, but we're learning all of this stuff about what Din's doing, so then we can see where he's at in the Book of Boba timeline. I just think a really smart move by Star Wars.
Yeah, I would say it was a really smart move by Star Wars in general because, again, like I said, this is a backdoor pilot for Mando Season 3, and I feel like I'm way more hyped for Mando Season 3 than I already was. I knew it was going to be good, but, after watching basically the Great Purge, I was like, I want more from that because I've always wanted to know more about the Great Purge. I hope, Mando Season 3 kind of just builds on this, and, we see it from Bo-Katan's point of view.
Yeah, and I think we're going to. At least that's what it seems like, especially with what they're doing with the flashbacks in Boba Fett. I think we're going to see the same type of flashbacks in Mando Season 3. Moving forward in the episode, we have Paz Vizsla, right? That's his name, correct?
Yep, Paz Vizsla.
Paz Vizsla challenges Din to the Darksaber because we learn that Din is not very skillful with the Darksaber yet. He kind of sucks with it, almost like the same way that Sabine sucked with it in the Trials of the Darksaber and Rebels, which is a really cool correlation. Hereth, if you want to go into that, because I know you were seeing a lot of those breakdowns earlier today.
Yeah, so what I love about basically this entire duel is if you look at it from a shot-by-shot angle, it's basically almost a recreation of Kanan versus Sabine in the Trials of the Darksaber, because the way that Din starts off with his activation, that is just a direct shot, and then the way he starts swinging at Paz Vizsla, that's you can see it's almost a shot for shot recreation for the first half of the duel. Obviously there's not that much emotion and rage there, but you could tell that they were looking at the Trials of the Darksaber for inspiration for this duel.
Yeah.
And that just goes back to if you watch animation, this entire episode gets enhanced for you because that's one of the things where I'm like, oh my god, they actually paid attention.
Yeah. Yep. You're like, holy crap! It's so amazing, and just seeing Din just swing it around and suck with it is really neat. One of my predictions for Mando Season 3 or Book of Boba Fett, whenever we see Din and Grogu, is I think Luke is going to train Din to use the Darksaber correctly, much like how Kanan trained Sabine. How sick would that be? Oh my gosh, that is a love letter to Star Wars Rebels if we see that, because that's directly mirroring the two scenes.
Yeah,
and I think that's a pretty good. I would say that could. I think that could definitely happen.
I would love to see, because my favorite thing about Rebels was kind of watching a Jedi train a Mandalorian and what are the consequences and effects of that. Just the conversations they're having. My favorite thing from Rebels was when Kanan tells Sabine these cheap tricks are not going to work. You don't know how the Jedi remember the Mandalorians lost the Civil War.
Yeah, that's right. In that episode, man, if you haven't watched Star Wars Rebels, watch it, because there are some just amazing episodes, and Trials of the Darksaber is something that is pretty essential, I think, going forward for the Mandalorian plot. So as we kind of progress, Din obviously beats Paz Vizsla in the duel and still yields the Darksaber, even though Paz did give him a fight.
Yeah,
he did definitely give him a fight, but in the end, Din comes out on top. the armor forges the armor in Beskar, and then we learn that Din kind of dismisses with the armor
because they have a conflict over like if he took his helmet off or not, and Din's like, screw it, I'm out of here.
Yeah, and that's something that's really interesting because how extreme Deathwatch is, and we really see it in this episode because Din's like, I took it off, but like, you don't understand why I took it off, and the armor is basically saying, no, you need to somehow make up for this because that is unacceptable. And it's like, okay, like I get what you're saying, but don't call me not a Mandalorian. I don't know. Deathwatch makes me really mad sometimes.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to Mando season 2 when Bo-Katan is describing them as like cultist extremists, basically of Mandalore.
Yeah, exactly. It exactly does. And so then as we move forward, we see that Din doesn't have a ship because the Razor Crest blew up. He's not riding on the Slave One anymore, and he has to go on this commercial trip. And we get this really funny bit with the droid. I was like cracking up the entire time because the droid's like, hey, you cannot enter this commercial trip with weapons on. And Din's like, okay. And he puts down all of his like secret weapons that he has in his thing and puts it in the bin. I thought that was a really funny bit.
Yeah, it's like basically like Din going through TSA and having to deal with all like the BS that happens before getting on a plane. So he's just like, fine, I'll get rid of all my metal weapons. Here you go.
Starts dumping all this stuff out of his wrists and his hitting compartments and everything. And then we learn that he's going to Tatooine, and who does he meet up with? The curly hair lady. I don't know her name.
Yeah.
Which I always thought she was pretty fun. And we learned that she was actually working on a ship for Din. And we also learned that she dated a Jawa. How the heck does that work? That's my question.
Nobody knows how that works.
I know, and like it just got me thinking, like, is that a common thing on Tatooine? Like, do people just hook up with Jawas all the time? Because that would be a little bit sus. But she probably knows what's underneath the hood, which I think is funny because none of us do. But we learn that she's building him a ship. We get over to the ship, and my first reaction went, oh, I think that's a Y-wing. I'm pretty sure that she built in a Y-wing. And as we walk over and she takes off the thing, it's a freaking Naboo starfighter. What? Oh, that was so cool. That was so freaking cool. What was your reaction when you saw that starfighter?
I was generally just shocked, and I was loving every second of it. And I feel like it was a great callback because she's like, this is a personal of the Royal Guard introduced by the Queen of Naboo, which obviously I don't think it's a Padme reference, but I think it's cool that they're referencing and acknowledging the kind of like the systematic rules of Naboo.
No, yeah, that's really cool. There were a lot of really cool callbacks, especially whenever Din, he flips the switches just like how Anakin's tries to start his speeder bike. It's like this. Din does the same motions and presses the same buttons. Not when he's starting his speeder bike. Whenever he's starting the Naboo starfighter at the end of Phantom Menace, because he goes do, press the button. Din does the same exact thing. Din does it. It doesn't work, and then finally it does work. And this thing is like a hot rod. I cannot wait to see Din fly this thing because it is badass.
Yeah, and kind of going back a little bit earlier in the episode, we finally get our first live-action appearance of a BD droid.
Yes!
At that
using a lot of the same animations.
At that moment, I freaked out because I was like, oh my god, they're bringing a BD droid into live action. That's absolutely incredible. Because like, if you played the game Jedi Fallen Order, you know exactly what that is. And like, and again, like, I just love BD and Fallen Order, so I was like, oh my god, they're bringing a BD unit into live action. I never thought like we're gonna see anything like this in live action. I thought it would kind of just be like, oh, here's the games, here's Fallen Order. Yes, it's canon, but we're never gonna really like acknowledge it, connect it. So like, actually seeing the connection to Fallen Order absolutely just like enhances episode 10,000 fold.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that he's wearing one of the skins that you can get for BD1 in the game, which is also a really neat callback. I mean, there's a lot of really cool callbacks, especially because especially within this one scene, whenever BD, whatever BD unit it is, goes and he like faces the camera and scans it like he's scanning something in Fallen Order. There's a ton of different sounds that he makes that is literally just a direct copy paste from Jedi Fallen Order, which I just love to see, and that kind of stuff just made this episode really, really special.
Yeah, this episode was basically just like lightning in a
Yeah,
bottle.
and yes, and it did so much stuff right. And even whenever Din is flying, he's test flying his speeder, he goes in the pod racing track we see in episode 1. Like, that is so cool.
Like, I know during that we were
That was
freaking out during that
awesome.
part of our reaction, because we were like flipping out. We're like, oh my god, he's going through the pod racing.
Yeah. Like, wow, like there's a lot of just really small details that if you're paying attention makes this episode so much better. And then he gets pulled over in space by the 2 police officers, if you want to call them police officers, that we see in Mando season 2, right?
Yeah, and cool fact, one of the X-Wing pilots is the stand-in actor for Luke Skywalker during Mando season 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I learned that recently on Twitter when I was going through it. I was like, oh my god, that's actually incredible that they actually worked that in. And then obviously the other one was the one from Mando season 2, where he was resting him off the ice planet and was trying to help Cara Dune basically just kind of like rebuild herself from Navarro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, yeah, that's really, really neat. And it also got me thinking with the hot rod, because that's what I'm calling it, the hot rod. If Din's gonna get an astromech, because it has a spot for an astromech, I wonder if he's actually gonna get one.
Or is he just gonna put Grogu in there?
Yeah, or he's gonna put Grogu in like a little thing, which would be just which would be better. And then we finally get at the very end of the episode, we get a tie-in to Book of Boba Fett. Finnick comes over to the curly hair lady and is like, hey, we need Din. And she's like, oh, Din's gone right now. And then Finnick comes down and is like, hey, it's Finnick Shan. And he's like, hey, Finnick. And so they're about to team up. And Din said he doesn't even want to get paid. He says it's on the house, which is pretty cool, I think, seeing that Din and Boba have this mutual respect for each other. So we're definitely going to see more of Din next episode.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. We're going to see Din. It's awesome.
Because again, I was talking about it in a live, like, while I love Book of Boba Fett, my biggest I wouldn't say complaint, but like if you compare Mando and Book of Boba Fett, is with Mando we had a very strong idea where the episodes were going. We're like, all right, it's gonna go like this, and then it's like something's gonna happen, and because like obviously Mando season 2, we're like, oh my god, Ahsoka's gonna show up, oh my god, Boba's gonna show up. Like, we had like a pretty good idea of like the roadmap of that. So when we cut to like, we think about Book of Boba Fett, we're like, every episode we're just like, we don't know what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I had to like call what next episode's going to be, I have a feeling it's going to be, we're gonna see everything from Boba's point of view, because like obviously this one's from Din's point of view. I feel like he was like, hey Fennec, go get Din off Tatooine from Mos Eisley, and I feel like Boba's off somewhere else getting other recruitments.
Yeah, which would be awesome. And I do think we're definitely going to see, I think that's definitely what's going on, is Boba's recruiting some people, Finnick's dealing with Din, who she knows she can get. So going forward, I think we're definitely going to see some people who Boba is going to get, which is going to be really neat. And I think the Kira reveal is going to come semi-soon. So I'm super excited for the next episode of Book of Boba Fett, and they really knocked it out of the park with this one.
Oh, for sure. I feel like this was by far my favorite episode, because like every other episode, like I couldn't really call favorite, because I was like, oh, this episode's good, this episode's good, this episode's kind of like this episode's good. Like there wasn't like an episode like that just like hit me and just like I got attached to it. This episode just hit me in a way where I was like, oh my god, this is probably one of the best live action Star Wars episodes.
Yeah. Oh my, yeah. I mean, this is right up there with, I think, Ahsoka's. This is right up there with Mando season 2 finale. I mean, this was great. They did it perfect. They perfectly gave us a bit of what Din's doing, and then connected it all in the very end with what we're going to be seeing in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I feel like it was like a connective tissue to what's going on in the Book of Boba Fett, and like a backdoor pilot for Mando season 3, because it kind of establishes like what Din's character arc's going to be in that.
Yeah, so I think that's all we kind of got for you guys right now. So thank you guys all for watching. We really appreciate if you guys would make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And we will be live talking about Rey Skywalker next Monday. And this Friday, we'll be talking Book of Boba Fett on the Roundtable with our friends over at Pods One Podcast. So thank you guys all for watching. May the Force be with you.
Always.